Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the New England Racing Show, Manchester, New Hampshire, Channel 23, and also on YouTube. And I'm your host, Bill Sturgis. We have an exciting show for you today. We were at Lee Speedway this past Friday night, and we covered the late model Sportsmen. They had their biggest race of the season, the 100-lap race, and this is just a couple of seconds of the pit tour, and then we get right into the race. You can see some of the cars are a lot of the cars are really nice. This is Grant Aether. We had a couple of outsiders show up that don't race there on a weekly basis. I'm not sure who that is. And then the green number 13 of Jimmy Russell. He runs up front. And we'll get right into the race now. Jeff Rollins in the 02 took the early lead and was running real good. Ryan Green's right up there, and the 92 of Ricky Porter, 14 of Patrick Stewart, and the 13 of Jimmy Russell round out the top five. In the beginning, there was a lot of side-by-side racing. After a few laps, they got strung out. Bright yellow 4 of Albie Ovitt. He finishes up front quite a few times. When we did the Victory Lane celebrations, he was there, I believe, 2 or 3 weeks in a row. And this was really the hottest night of the year at Lee. It was about 90 degrees at 8 o'clock at night, and these poor guys are doing 100 laps in a full-bodied car. There's J.R. Burrill right behind the yellow car of Albie Ovitt. And Grant Aether behind him. I believe that red car was the 10 of John Falcone. These cars are a lot like the late models ACT cars, except they run narrower tires. And they do have, from what I understand, they don't run the crate engine. They have more power than the ACT cars, but it's just harder to get it down to the ground. And they may run, I believe they run different frames too, different chassis. But they look a lot like the ACT cars. The McDonald family that owns Lee had some tire grip spray put in the corners this week and last week, and it made for a lot of good side-by-side racing. Of course, I don't know if it had a chance to cure because we had so much rain. But I know we walked out on the track and your feet were sticking to the track, so it did work. It looked like it worked pretty well. Now this is 100 laps, and at 50 laps they had a mandatory pit stop where everyone had to come in the pits and you could change one tire, but you had to do it with a manual wrench, like one of those four-way spinners, call them. And it's pretty interesting to watch that. It wasn't like a Sprint Cup pit stop by any means. There's JR, Albie, Ovitt, and Grant Ather running in a group there, and they were going at it pretty hard. Meanwhile, Jeff Rollins just took off in the front, so we didn't want to just follow him, so we wanted to show the battles in a little further back in the pack as people worked their way from, 10th, 15th starting spot to get to the front. And that's a real challenge, and that's what makes these drivers so good, is that they can do that every week. And there's a 63 of Nick Magnotti. He's a front runner also. Well, what we did was we skipped a few laps here because the cars were getting strung out and we didn't have enough time to tape the entire race. So we skip up to pretty much lap 45, and that's right before the halfway point where they had to do their mandatory pit stops. There's JR. He's catching up to Jimmy Russell. They're side by side. And JR ends up backing into the wall. That was too bad. He was working his way right through the pack. And he ended up at lap 67 with some damage. Okay, here's where they did their mandatory pit stop. We focused in here on Jeff Rollins. And he's got the four-way wrench. Every time I tried doing that, I'd spin it as hard as I could, and the thing would come off the lug nut and whack me in the knee and be limping around for a couple of hours. They're doing pretty good. Reminds me of, I was watching ESPN, they were talking about Wendell Scott, the NASCAR's black race car driver from the 60s. And he didn't have much of a team. I think it was just him. So he'd do a pit stop, and he had to get out and change his own tires. Can you imagine doing that now? And they didn't have any cordless wrenches or anything then. Here goes Jeff. He wasn't the first one out. I think the first one out was Michelle Fushpansky, the 1% car. There's JR still in the wall. And, so that was a good time to do the pit stops. And that's Skip's Towing from Londonderry, New Hampshire. And that was Skip getting in the tow truck. We interviewed Skip earlier in the year when they had a car show at Rochester. And Skip has a collection of old race cars at his house. I don't know how they got there, but if he ever tows your race car, and all of a sudden it's not in your pits, you'll know what happened to it. Just kidding, Skip.
Team of midgets here next Friday night, 7 o'clock the starting time. Money bags. Race coming up for the 350 Super Modifieds. 2 weeks from tonight, $15,000 permit to the back end of car number.
Yeah, not a good situation for JR. I mean, that's a really nice looking car too. And JR's dad, Phil Burrill Sr., was a great pro stock driver back in his day in the early 80s. And JR is picking up where he left off. Just an unfortunate situation when you're racing side by side. Somebody gets a little bit loose or they bump and somebody's going in the wall. Well, here's a restart. Jeff Rollins gets into Michelle, and they actually locked together on the front straightaway here. It took them about 10 minutes to get the cars apart. Skip's Towing was right on the scene, lifting up Jeff Rollins' car to get it unlocked from Michelle's. I'm not sure what happened there. Somebody got a little over anxious. He says they started the race before the flag man threw the green. Here they go for the next restart. Jeff has to go to the back now.
Rollins, who is clearly the fastest car on the Speedway, has anything for the leaders. 67 laps completed, and here we go. Side by side on the corner now. Green car. Yes, indeed, the green car with Nick Daniel on the outside.
That's Ryan Green in the 83 and Nick Magnati in the 63 on the outside. Third place was the 91. Jimmy Russell in the green car in fourth. And then Ricky Porter in this. Ricky Porter's in the 92. Well, that's some good driving there to pass him on the outside like that. Lap 72 right here. Things are really heating up. Jeff Rollins is working his way back up to the front. And of course, Grant Ather just working his way up methodically, as he does every week. You know, you just can't go flat out. You have to save your tires to a certain degree, or you'll overheat them and burn them up. And these guys are pretty good at that. It's not just Grant and a few others. I'd say there's about 7 or 8 of these guys that could win any of these races. And I say guys, even Michelle, the only lady driver here, she won last year also. She's a pretty hard-nosed competitor. Ricky Porter in front. Or Nick Magnotti, I'm sorry. And I believe that's Ricky Porter working on him. And there's Grant working his way up. He's in third. Jeff Rollins right behind him in fourth. Lap 83. And Ricky Porter spun out, or just went up against the wall. Looked like it was on his own trying to catch Nick Magnotti. So here's the restart with about 15 laps to go. Nick Magnotti, Grant Ather on the outside. Jeff Rollins, second row inside. Ryan Green. And look at Grant just hanging on the outside. He's such a good driver. And there's Jeff Rollins trying to follow him. Sometimes with the stuff on the track, the outside gives you a little bit more momentum. And if you're on the inside, you kind of get pinched down and you can't come off the corners so well. And there's a side-by-side battle for fourth. Jeff Rollins not giving up. He's hanging right there with Grant. Lap 88. To go. I gotta hand it to these guys to do 100 plus laps in these cars on a 90-degree night is just unbelievable. I was getting tired just holding the camera up. I mean, after the race, the yellow 4-car Albiovic, he was just overcome by the fumes, and the ambulance went over and they gave him some oxygen to help him out. I'm surprised that there weren't more drivers like that. Grant's starting to stretch it out a little bit. Just keep that car length so they can't do anything to you. Grant's showing everybody here that he's not the points leader by accident. And he's stretching it out a little bit. He's just going to show everyone who's number one. One to go. Well, that didn't come easy for Grant. And Jeff pulls up. Congratulate him. Good, clean racing. A few minor incidents, but all in all, it was a pretty good race. This was their biggest race of the year, 100 laps, and they really were up to it. It was a very exciting race at the end.
came out, it wasn't good. Came back in, fixed it, pulled it apart again. Helped out that hobby race was give us a little more time in the fireworks. So put a new control arm in it. Just went for it. Would like to see that thing go green at the end. Maybe we had a shot, but just a little too tight at the end.
Well, you led it for a while and come home with a third place finish in the biggest race of the year, so congratulations.
And thanks for everybody coming out tonight. Everybody that runs the track and happy
The
holidays.
tech inspectors are checking the durometer of the tires, make sure nobody's putting softener on them.
Taking a big slug of water and gave it all he could out here as he was the early leader, and you had a little scare there on the restart.
Yeah, stuff like that happens sometimes. They left lap cars up there, but it is racing. Maybe that's what they're going to do. That's all. Came back, solid top two. So with all the DNFs we have with this car, second's perfect for us.
Yeah, and it looks like the damage was not as bad as it looked for you to drive this thing into second.
Yeah, the car was still going good. There's something definitely a little fast, but it's still drivable.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
These guys are
Good job, Jeff Rollins.
tonight, with the second place finish for Jeff Rollins in the 0-2, and here's our winner right here. Grant Ather, you are fun to watch, man. To watch you come through the pack like you did, boy, that was you had that time just right.
Yeah, it's a lesson in patience. I got to thank huge thanks to ARP Auto, Seacoast Wholesale, Charlie Cazar Builders, AWB Pavement, Easton Electric, LePage's Auto, FF Performance Parts for an awesome motor. We had the fastest guy here. Ricky got loose there and got to the wall, but I think Ricky probably could have won it.
Did you need that caution to get around those guys in front of you, or do you think you might have been able to do it without a yellow?
Well, I was just getting ready for go time, and a yellow came out. I'm not real sure. I had some left in the tank. Like I said, you do 100 laps on the 8-inch run of tires and they wear out, so I was trying to wait as long as I could. I started to get a little impatient. Jeff Rollins, awesome job. Came from the back. Nick wrecked his car. He racing here. He is sitting third. So not a bad night. Just hot.
Yeah, for sure. The hottest night and the biggest race of the year, and you're in victory lane. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's 3 in a row for these. They've been having these 3 years, and this is it. Now I'm done.
Nice go.
Thank you very much.
Grant Ather comes home the winner in the Prime Storage and Warehouse late mile 100 lap race, and these guys are about ready to pass out down here from the heat. That's a long.
Well, I thought it was a pretty good race, and a lot of these drivers in this class are really top-notch drivers. They've got beautiful cars. I'm sure they're working in a garage 3-4 nights a week getting the cars ready, and that's what makes such good competition. So we're proud to show the late model Sportsman race. We thought it was time for them to shine, and they certainly did. Well, this week coming up, Lee Speedway is going to have NEMA Midgets, NEMA Lights, the Supers, and we'll be there, and then we'll see what's going on Saturday night. New Hampshire Speedway's running this weekend, so a lot of tracks are taking the week off, and we'll see you next week with some more action, and thanks for joining us.